Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Institute for Personal Development, where total consciousness is the new frontier. Kriya Yoga is the union of the individual with the divine. Join us as we explore the practices that initiate this process.
Good morning. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. Let's talk consciousness. I am your hostess, Lisa Winton, and with me is Kenny Toy, also known as Swami Jayananda, founder of Institute for Personal Development, located here in Hampton, New Hampshire. Good morning, Swami. Thank you for being here today. How are you?
Good morning. I'm here. I'm doing okay, I think. And how about you? How are you doing?
I'm doing great today. It's a beautiful, sunny start to our Monday morning here in Hampton. And I want to thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Today on The Voice of Yoga, we will talk about the third stage of Kriya Yoga, Asana as a system of exercise which uses the geometry of our physical bodies to lengthen and strengthen muscles, which brings the bones into a position of internal support. The exercises have procedure and intention. Listen as we explain the physical postures or a module that fits into this master plan leading to total consciousness. When we include the internal mental work of training the mind to serve spirit and train the body to serve the mind with the symbol of spirit, then matter and mind come together with the right information. So welcome again to the Voice of Yoga. We are talking consciousness. So Swami, let's begin again. Let's go into more of a in-depth description as to what is Asana, what does it mean, and why is it important to our yoga practice?
Well, the physical postures, Asana, is probably one of the misunderstood aspects of yoga. Some people think that the physical postures themselves are yoga. But when you research yoga and you examine the Yoga Sutras, the only postures that are really mentioned in the Yoga Sutras are the meditative postures. Most of what we do today really began with a man named Krishnamacharya who worked at the British gymnasts in the early 1900s. And he trained two very key people with regard to the concept of asana, was B.K.S. Iyengar and Pattabhi Jois. Because what happened with the physical postures is that they took on different meaning, I think. That when you examine Pattabhi Jois' Ashtanga Yoga, which is the concept of like power yoga, if you really look at it, it's more like a gymnast's workout. And it was B.K.S. Iyengar who really focused on the concept of alignment, because from my understanding, asana means posture. And posture, the way that Iyengar really kind of presented it, was a system of exercises that you work with the geometry of your body. You lengthen and strengthen muscles, but you move bones into a position of internal support. See, when bones are supporting us internally, then the energy moves through the physical body the way it's supposed to. And if the bones aren't supporting us internally, then there's this gripping effect in the muscles that will compensate for bones' inability to support. But that muscle memory, that pattern in the muscle, will actually pull bones out of alignment, which creates constriction and the restriction of the flow of energy through the physical body. So when I actually started Institute for Personal Development, one of the things that we talk about is I teach Kriya Yoga, and Paramahansa Yogananda was the one that brought Kriya Yoga to the United States. But when he brought Kriya Yoga to the United States, he kind of brought it, I want to say, in a modified format, because they didn't do asana, with the Kriya Yoga. They did what they called Hatha Yoga, which is actually another system of yoga that includes the physical postures. But that's a real misconception in the yoga community, that Hatha Yoga is the postures and Kriya Yoga is the like a meditative type of yoga. And it's not really true, especially if you read Swami Kriyananda's book, The Spiritual Science of Kriya Yoga, where he talks about the 8 essential stages of yoga. But it's very important to understand that asana posture is a very big factor in the yoga process. And the reason being is that how we think is what we become. The physical body is really a manifestation of your inner subjective state. It's a diagram of your mind. And so working that relationship is really helpful because, like we said in the opening, I mean, the intention of yoga is total consciousness. It's not about putting your foot on your head or getting your hand to the floor. It's about getting this light in your soul. It's about rebirthing your body in this invisible, intangible source of sustenance. And if you just do that intellectually, it's one thing. But when you do it experientially, when you actually internalize the life force as a symbol for validation in the physical body, that's the yoga part. That's when matter and mind come together with this new information that initiates a progressive cycle. And working physical exercises, you can do them till you're blue in the face, won't give you that internal connection. And so the simple fact that you are doing physical exercises that might mimic what Krishnamacharya was doing, it might fall way short of the mark based on the standard that we would use in Kriya Yoga that we teach. And that was one of the reasons why we developed a Kriya Yoga Asana program. And when we did that, we really we based it more on the approach of B.K.S. Iyengar than Pattabhi Jois. We didn't do it because we wanted to get another workout. We did it because we were looking to really accommodate a certain aspect of fitness that has gone neglected, posture. And when you cross-examine it and you look at it, I mean, especially today, with our Western socialization, we're constantly seeking external reinforcement to the extent that we sit down in a chair. Now, when you plop down in a chair, you get the benefit of external support, but you may not have the benefit of internal support, which is a very different dynamic. In earlier times, like when yoga was codified, people sat on the floor and they worked in the fields. So you naturally train your bones to support you internally when you sit on the floor. And that's something that's missing in our Western socialization. And so it was something that we really wanted to focus on and incorporate into our asana practice.
So you're talking about the importance of alignment, and that's basically how your asana classes are structured, or your postures are structured. And you always say, when you're cueing the class, you're always talking about building it from the ground up. So can you explain why that is important, and that has something to do with the energy flow that you were talking about earlier?
Yeah, see, for us, postures have procedure and intention. I've been to yoga classes where they say there's no such thing as doing a yoga posture wrong. And in our model, there are correct ways of doing it because you have procedure and intention. And say, for example, whatever point of contact that you touch the earth, that's going to be your starting point. But remember, the intention is to get your bones to support you internally. Because even, say, for example, a really important posture that we teach is mountain pose. And if you really examine it and you look at it, the arches of your feet are the foundation of your posture. Now, if the arch of the foot doesn't come up in exactly where it's designed to support the weight of the body, then there's going to be compensation. Mm-hmm. The segments of the leg, the pelvis may not sit right. The spinal column won't stack up right. And so you can have problems up in your shoulders, but the origins of your problem could be at the arches of your feet. And so building mountain pose with starting points that are consistent is really important. Foot placement. Mm-hmm. And also using the posture to, again, lengthen and strengthen muscles and move bones into a position of internal support. And when you do recognize that there is a procedure to the posture, there is an intention to the posture, that's just on a physical level. Then there's all of this internal mental work that you must include to make it a yoga posture.
So yesterday I was running a class, and we were working on warriors and triangles. And, of course, when you're cueing the warriors and triangles, whichever posture, you're working on, you start with your feet, legs length apart or a distance that's comfortable for you, and, getting your feet in the correct alignment. And now I noticed in some yoga magazines and pictures, and sometimes if they don't have their feet positioned with the heel of the front foot's in alignment with the arch of the back foot, they have it, sometimes it's wider, it's a wider stance. Now, when we're talking about energy flow and trying to get everything to stack up right, so building it from the ground up and taking your warriors and triangles as an example, I mean, those are postures where it could be dramatically different for your bones if you don't have that, even that one particular alignment in place, the front heel and the arch of the back foot. So if we don't have that alignment, is that going to change, could that possibly change how we think? I mean, would that have an effect on us, and a subtle effect that we're not even aware of?
Oh, absolutely. The relativity of all of this is amazing. And like we were saying, if the arch of the foot doesn't come up in exactly where it's supposed to be, because it's in Tai Chi that they call the arch of the foot the bubbling well, which is a really interesting thing to understand. It's how you draw your energy from the earth. And it kind of reminds me of the gap on a spark plug for an automobile, that if that gap isn't exactly what it's supposed to be for designed for the combustion of your engine, then the automobile doesn't run correctly. And if you had your spark plugs were gapped at different settings, it would affect how it was firing, how it was running. And so the same is true with when you're doing your physical postures, that if you don't have that proper foot placement, then it's definitely going to change not just the arch of the foot, but how the segments of the leg line up, and how the bones are going to make up in the knee joint. And then, of course, what's going to happen in the pelvis. And then how does that affect the spine? And the relativity of this is really quite noticeable after a while. And the more in tune you are with the intricate details of it, I think the more aware you become of what you're doing. And then, like I always say, it's not about getting your hand to the floor or your foot on your head. It's all about getting this light in your soul. And the whole thing of keeping your body comfortable so that it's impressionable and receptive to information is a really important variable. And then the other thing that we include is the whole thing of the use of the mind, using the mind to scan the body, using the mind to examine itself, using the mind to turn to your creativity, your imagination, to replace any debilitating thoughts so that you can actually internalize new images in the body, record cellular memory. Very powerful part of the practice.
All right, so we're going to hold that thought to pause to hear a word from our sponsor. So listeners, we'll be back with you shortly.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate.
If you are looking for a samadhi-based experience, IPD Kriya Yoga has the goods. A complete yoga program that includes the practices and the process. Starting with the separation from mother, including the labors and tasks of the hero and the return as a whole person. Practice makes perfect only when practice is whole. Kriya Yoga is a path of action, knowledge, and devotion. Samadhi, or total consciousness, is experienced by knowing and doing with devotion. Call or click now and get started. 603-929-0303 or www.ipdtransform.com. Namaste.
Welcome back. For those of you just joining us, you're listening to The Voice of Yoga, and we are talking consciousness. So, Swami, getting back to the Asana part of our yoga program, so it seems like if you do your Asana practice without the internal mental work, that could become problematic, or you're just not really experiencing yoga. And then if you do, or if you do just the meditative work in your yoga practice without the Asana, that could also be problematic too in your quest to achieve a different level of consciousness. So it really seems that we have to really have them both and be able to do both when we're practicing both meditation and Asana.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with that. Especially, you really want to understand meditation not as an activity, but really as a state of being. Because if you do not expand the mind beyond the limits of the physical body, then you really don't have a meditative state. There's a difference between a trance state and a true meditative state. A trance state is you take a conscious mind that's the size of a quarter and you put it in a different coordinate of consciousness. A meditative state is where the mind actually opens. And when you're doing your asana, it's really important to recognize this, because when you first start doing physical exercises, you may notice that your field of awareness is relatively narrow. So in other words, like if posture has a procedure, if you're doing a posture like a triangle, and you have awareness of what's going on in your right foot, you may have absolutely no idea what's going on with your left hand. So one of the things that we recommend and suggest is that you move your mind through your body. So you're constantly kind of scanning what's going on in your feet, what's going on in your ankles, your shins, your knees, your thighs, your hips, your torso, wrists, hands, fingers, neck, head, face. And by doing that, you have to remember that energy follows mind, that you're actually moving energy into your physical body. And that's very different than, say, for example, somebody who is beyond their comfort zone, in a position, and their mind has abandoned their body. It's a very different dynamic. So keeping your body comfortable becomes really important in the whole, I want to say, process of expanding consciousness, because, just like you had said, you don't want to polarize and just do physical postures, and then you don't want to try and ignore the physical part and move into what has commonly been referred to as the higher realms of yoga. People that say that, Bhakti yoga is better than Kriya Yoga kind of a thing. That's really not how it works, and that's why we say it's a path of action, it's a path of knowledge, and it's a path of devotion. And the more educated you are about how that works with regard to a yoga practice, the more you employ and the larger your return.
I want to talk a minute about, we're always talking about how to take yoga off the mat and apply it to our daily lives. So how can we take asana off of the mat and apply that to our daily lives? And I'm just thinking about those people who maybe are sitting in an office all day, they're sitting in a chair. So what are some of the things that we have to be reminded of, whether we're sitting in a chair or sitting in a car? How can we employ proper alignment and what we learn from asana into our daily routine?
Again, it's the simple concept of internal support. Physically, getting your bones to support you internally becomes optimal. Because when the bones support internally, then the muscles can relax. They're just there to stabilize. But the energy is moving through the body the way it's supposed to. And if you apply that simple concept, like you say, what does it matter if you're standing at the sink doing dishes, or you are sitting at your desk, or you're sitting in your car? The whole thing is that we don't sit down, we sit up in yoga. And so that's one of the practical benefits of it, and then beyond just the physical aspect of internal support, there's also the psychological, conceptual practice of just using what you need to produce the feeling you're happy becomes the ultimate coping skill to deal with real life circumstances and situations. Because now you're infiltrating this attitude of joy into whatever it is that you're doing. And it's a very, I want to say, beneficial position to master.
I remember working with a young gal, and she was sitting on a stool, and she was all hunched over, and I looked at her and I said, I just want you to see or feel how it is that you're sitting right now. I said, no, pull your shoulders back, open up at the chest, align your shoulders over your hips. And then she's like, wow, I feel much better, because she was saying that she wasn't feeling so good. And I said, so I want you to repeat after me. We don't sit down, we sit up. So I had to repeat that like about 5 times. And so that became like a joke with us. But I'm hoping that will be something that she'll remember, for the rest of her life. But my whole point is that it is so important to understand whether you're standing or whether you're sitting, to lift the torso out of the pelvis, pull the shoulders back in alignment with your hips, and you will actually feel better, like what you had said earlier. There is a benefit to keeping the spine up, up straight and designed to carry the body, and ride through the curves of the spine, which is how you cue in the Asana class. And the benefit from that is that energy is moving through your body so much better, and you will actually have this sense of clarity and your body is tapping into its own wisdom when you carry yourself in a proper way. Like you said, whether you're standing at the sink or walking, it's lifting that torso. It's putting the shoulders where they belong, and therefore everything else will fall into place, not only physically but mentally as well. And people may find they may be more productive in their workspace if they just make these subtle changes in their postures.
Yeah, and also making changes in your thoughts. That if when you lift the ribs and you open the chest and you kind of feel connected to something that's pure, powerful, and sacred, it will consistently give you that return. So every time you lift the ribs, you feel the benefit of internal support. And that becomes conditioning, patterning. And so the more of the internal mental work you can enlist and employ, I think the better. The more that you can work with positive imagery. And then, of course, that relationship between your mind and your body is that you have to remember that the body has power, but it has no vision. It has no discernment. And when the body is comfortable, it's impressionable and receptive to information. So that's one of the things I think that's very important when you're doing an asana practice, is to keep your body comfortable. And then recognize that the real power of the practice is found in the mind. And by constantly infiltrating positive imagery into the body on a regular basis, you'll start to format cellular memory that would be more in sync with just like what you were talking about. That now all of a sudden you just lift your ribs and now you feel better. And you feel better because you've got the benefit of internal support physically, but then psychologically and conceptually, you're connected to something that's pure, powerful, and sacred and isn't going to let you down.
So it really is a benefit to consciously feel this internal support. And then I think what you're saying is through the patterning, through the conditioning, then this is something that will happen even unconsciously.
Yeah, and then of course that would be the association. It's Pavlov's dog, basically. You ring the bell and the dog salivates.
And so what we want to do is always try to get that alignment in space, in place, so that we can therefore feel the benefit of that internal support and spirit moving through our bodies.
Absolutely, yeah. And then that's when, like we would say, then you have yoga. All
right, great. So in closing, it's about that time we got to shut down our program. So I'd like to invite you listeners out there to visit the website. Follow Swami on Pinterest and Twitter, and, of course, on Facebook. Be sure to visit the site. It's www.ipdtransform.com. And then once there, you can post comments about this show or any ideas for shows you may want us to consider. But keep those comments, questions, and curiosities coming, because Swami does enjoy hearing from you. And be sure to tune in next week. I believe we're going to be celebrating the 4th of July. And in the meantime, you can email me at lisa@ipdtransform.com with any questions you would like Swami to answer. So, and Swami, speaking of that, any final thoughts or comments about this show?
Well, I would like to encourage people to practice asana, but remember, practice makes perfect. Only one practice is perfect. And with that, I'll wish everybody a good day. Namaste, and I'll give it back to you.
And thank you for listening to our program, The Voice of Yoga. This is Lisa Winton along with Swami Jayananda signing off. Have a wonderful Kriya Yoga kind of day. Namaste.